good.
Okay. Live.
You ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Do you know what that was?
What's that? Ooh.
Just
Nope.
cracked open a beer, mate.
We cracked open a beer. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I better intro it. Welcome back to the Carp Chronicles. We've been gone for a while, to be honest. Apologies about that. Obviously, we just had Tommy Bish on, Tom Bishop, Tommy the Gun, the machine gun. But other than that, we've been absent, and we do apologise about that. Mercifully brief explanation. We met up for our social session that we've been hamming up for a while. We did record one. It wasn't great. It was a bad vibe. Maybe we'll come on to it later on. So we ditched that. So this is the long-awaited bait part 2. So many messages. I should have counted them, actually. But we've had so many messages of people asking when we're going to do bait part 2. And that is now. We're actually going to splice it in with your questions. In fact, I think, to be honest, we're just going to be answering listeners' questions today. And they're pretty much all about bait. So we're probably going to be, non-stop talking about bait. So let's just call it bait part 2. It's also a bit of an on the bank episode. Me, Sam. I'm in my office recording this, and Pete is out on the bank. Pete, why don't you fill everyone in, and me? I don't know what you're doing or where you are. Fill us in, mate. Set the scene. What's happening?
So I'm at my club water, the one I've been targeting all year, and I've been failing miserably. I guess we can talk about that as well, or not talk about it. Actually, that'd be nicer. But I've not been...
We'll talk about it.
I've been off the ball for the last probably 3 weeks. I've not been down here at all. I don't think I've even walked around with the kids or anything. So no bait's gone in. I've been off the ball. Last time I was here, I fished a new swim, and I saw a lot of fish showing as well. And that's kind of where I wanted to plot up tonight. And the wind's really trickling into that corner. And I gave you a test call. And the signal down there is just a joke. So, being a trooper that I am for the podcast, I'm fishing in an unfavourable swim, so I've got decent phone signal, so we can do this. Sad, isn't it? So I'm fishing. It's a swim that I've fished a lot. I've just got rods down either margin. It shelves off pretty deep to about 20 foot in front of me. So I'm just tight into the margin. On my right hand spot, it's quite weedy. So I'm just on the edge of a bit of weed. And guess what I'm fishing for bait? Can you guess? Something you've given me.
It's a bait.
No.
Something I've given you. I don't know, some kind of particle. Have you done my nut trick?
No.
Are we going to talk about that or not?
No. I've
okay. Right,
for the reason I'm using this, mate. I'm using the Baitworks Creamino that you gave me.
Joking. Oh yeah. That's a bit of you. When I heard that bait come out, I use their other boilies when I'm being lazy, when I'm not using particle or my own paste and stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a bit of you, doesn't it, Pete?
Yeah, I quite like it, to be honest. It's a bit different, isn't it, for a birdseed bait? It's I don't know. It's very dark in appearance. It's quite yeasty. Is there birdseed
in it?
Yeah, it's loads of hemp seed in there, like full hemp seed. I thought you'd used it, mate. I thought you'd be
No.
But yeah, no, it's definitely got some birdseed in there. There's a lot of hemp seed in there as well. The only reason I'm using it, so you gave me this. It's been in the boot of the car, waiting for its first little trial. But I actually left my nuts at home. I got them out of the freezer. They're defrosting on their own at home.
Well, I thought, because we hadn't seen each other for so many years, I thought we'd be doing gifts. So I thought, I was getting bait anyway, getting some boilie for myself. I thought, I'll get Pete a little bag of this. Actually, I got you like 4 gifts, I think.
3. Yeah, 3 gifts.
What? 3. What did you get me, Pete?
Got you a bottle of proper job, mate.
Yeah. Well, you didn't. No, you didn't. You just didn't. You didn't drink all your beers. So when we said our goodbyes, you just chucked it in my boot or something.
Yeah, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did actually, to be fair.
Yeah. Mate, that liquid you gave me, the unknown liquid, I've still got that in my tub. It really is it's quite smelly.
Yeah. Anyway, Pete, set the scene of where you're fishing, just so we all know what's going on, and then I think we need to jump into these questions.
Yeah, it's not much more to say really. It's a Sunday evening.
You're fishing?
I'm fishing.
Yeah.
I've baited light because I've not been down here for a while. It's heavingly busy on the weekends, so I've come here on a Sunday. I've actually got the lake to myself. I can only assume it's been busy. So I've decided to put in not too much bait because I imagine they've seen a lot over the weekend. Traps are set.
You literally just fishing. Sorry, mate. Literally just fishing over boilie.
Just over boilie, just crumb some up. Yeah, and that's it.
All right, awesome. So, first off, thank you to everyone that's messaged us. Not even necessarily for questions. We've been getting so many messages, and it's actually really, really nice to read them all. So, I don't think you're being a nuisance or anything like that. I think some of you think like, "Oh, I shouldn't message them." You absolutely can. Like, honestly, it's really, really nice. I'll always make time to respond to everyone. So yeah, drop us a message on Instagram if you want to say hello or anything, or Facebook. Pete picks up Facebook, don't you, mate?
Yes, I do, Sam. We're pretty busy on there,
yeah.
mate. A lot going on.
So let's jump into these questions. Oh no, sorry everyone. What we've got to do, tipple of the episode. Pete, what are you drinking?
Well, mate, because we were doing a pod, and I'm fishing, I'm on the bank, I'm having a lager, and I'm having a Saint Etienne, which is a...
Oh, traditional.
Yeah. It's like, people probably think, what the hell? People come in to swim and be like, what's with the funny name beer? But it's just like a Lidl own brand beer. It's like, you get a 4 for like £2.50 or something. But back in the day, we used to drink it on the bank all the time, didn't we? So, for tradition.
That was literally all we could afford. Yeah, it's because it's premium strength, cheap beer, basically. I thought we got it from the new oldie. Well, it was new in Newquay.
Yeah,
that's
Aldi.
where we used to got it from. Yeah. All right, cool. So you got a St. Etienne. I'm actually not drinking for a week. Shock horror. So I'm getting my fat ass in shape. I've hired a coach just for the accountability. Like, I'm not, it's just purely accountability. And yeah, she said that she doesn't want me to drink for a week, so I'm not drinking for a week. So, typical of this episode for me, I've got a Waitrose Sunshine shot with carrot and turmeric.
Ooh.
I've got a Rebel Kitchen 100% organic coconut water, made from nature's best nuts is the slogan. And then I've got a couple of kombuchas, Equinox organic kombucha, as always. Love this stuff. I've got pink grapefruit and guava, and then I've got a raspberry and elderflower. So,
dude,
very, very girly, very feminine, very healthy. One extreme to the other.
When we do the pod normally, you list off a load of beers, and I'm just like, this is Sam's excuse just to get beered up. But you've got a lot.
Honestly,
got a lot of drinks, mate. Even when you're not on the beer, like, I'm amazed.
Even when I'm not the beer, I like to get into it, and I don't know, mate. You know what I'm like. Everything I do, I have to do it to extreme, and that's not me saying I want to do it to extreme. It's just naturally who I am. It's weird. It's really weird. In fact, on the Carp forum, I said this yesterday. I was like, they were talking about podcast recommendations, so I kind of piped up, try and get some listeners. No, I didn't. I piped up and said what I like, and then I mentioned that we do, and I said on there, like, actually, I'm like, and this is genuine, I'm quite embarrassed listening back to a lot of these episodes. I have to listen to them back because I'm the one that edits them. So listening to myself just slurring words, not being able to put sentences together, I actually genuinely feel quite embarrassed by it. So I feel like I need to almost apologize to everyone. I am sorry, guys. I think it's what started as a fun thing, typical of the episode. I think I've taken it out of hand. So even on the ones I can drink, I'm going to try and just have a few, calm it down a little bit. Like Tommy... Yeah, the last one, Tommy the Gun. Like, I couldn't even finish it off. If you listen to it, like, I don't really round the episode off.
To be honest, though, mate, first of all, I wanted to say this at the beginning episode, and I've completely forgot. I wanted to say, like, good job, because that was a cracking listen, mate, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Tommy's seems like a really decent chap. He can talk. He talks and talks, which is a perfect guest for a podcast. But no, I think both of you, really good job, mate. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. My favourite,
Oh, nice
my
one.
favourite takeaway was the nicknames. Now, I just assumed he was called Tommy the Gun, but it's and it's when you asked him, and he was just like, "You're the only person who's ever called me that." That just made me laugh, mate, because that's just the type of thing you do. It gave me a bit of a chuckle.
Yeah. Other people that don't know me probably don't get it though. Probably just sounds stupid.
Oh, I don't know, mate. It was entertaining, and it was a good listen as well. He was a enjoyable guest.
Yeah, he was. He's great. He's had quite a few people message actually and say, well, a couple of people, and they were like, oh, he's like clearly a really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what they said. Something like along those lines.
That's it.
Yeah, well, there we go. There's our tipples of the episode. Done and dusted. Let's move on. Sorry to keep you all. I feel like we've been waffling for ages.
Yeah.
First off, first question is from Fishing Fletch. Fishing Fletch has said, enjoyed the latest podcast, guys. Always come away with something I can use in my own fishing. The squid sauce has really made a difference to my fishing, and looking forward to trying the salmigo very soon. Would be good to hear your views on particles, brackets, you touched on them in the last podcast, fish meals, and also pre-baiting. Keep up the great work and enjoy the whiskey. Cheers, Paul. Thank you, Paul. I think Paul's one of our longer listeners. He's messaged us before, I believe. I say I believe. I've put all these messages onto a document, so I can't actually look at our old messages. Do you want to go first with that, Pete? Do you want to give your opinions on each point?
The question: what were the main points? Tips for particles?
No.
Sorry. There's to be honest with you, I can see a fish rolling in the distance. Which is
Oh, do you want me to take over and you get a rod on it?
no. It's well beyond my distance, mate. Well beyond my range. So yeah, particle. Yeah, great for pre-bait. I think as well, if you're fishing like a longer session, you can sort of preoccupy the fish and keep them on the spot longer. But I think as well, if you want a quick bite, it can sort of hinder that. Your view, Sam?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely good for pre-baiting, and I'll say why, and I'm sure this is why you say it. I mean, A, it's inexpensive, so you can hafe it in, not worry too much about the bank. As well as that, it'll obviously, cause it's generally smaller pieces than say a boilie. It's going to clear the spots well. You're going to get all kinds of fish feed on that, of course. That's not always a bad thing. Presuming there's other species of fish within your lake. Most lakes there are, or at least there should be for good biodiversity. But yes, it's good for cleaning your spots, good for getting spots going. Of course, it's going to keep them in that area for a long time as well. I think, to be honest with you, it depends how you fish, isn't it? I mean, so I sound like I'm giving it the big one. I'm really not, but my hook baits that I like to use over both boilie and particle, to be honest with you, I'm really confident that they are one of the first few that get picked up, just from watching fish in like quite a few different scenarios. Excuse me, just burping. So for me, I think getting particle in your swim is actually a very good way to get a load of attraction. Now, the reason why, you've heard us speak about liquids. Obviously, in particles, you can get more liquids and powders matted into it, if that makes sense. Yes, it will soak in, but it'll also soak into boilies. But it will get matted in and it will release quite quickly. So you can get a load of particle down onto the lake bed, therefore getting a lot of attraction in the area. Also, you're going to get smaller fish come in. That's further attraction for the carp, presuming carp are your species that you're targeting, to come in. And then if you're really confident on your hook bait being picked up, perhaps before some other things, or at least not at the end, then you got a great, win-win scenario there, if that makes sense. That being said, I think they can make fish harder to hook. I think obviously over particle, the fish are moving much less. They're more kind of hovering over a spot and hoovering. So the less the fish is moving, the less movement on the hook link, and the less movement therefore on the hook, so the less likely you are to hook them. So I think that's definitely an issue, or something that you need to consider, compared to, say, fishing over boilies, where even if they're, the boilies are 6 inches apart, the fish, they're still on the move. They do, if you watch them, take some time to watch them and feed over different things, they will move differently for sure. So I think that can work really, really well. if you're finding it hard to hook the fish, or if they're feeding funny or something like that. So yeah, I mean, that I would say that was definitely a downside of particles. I don't know if you agree with that, Pete, or if you found that
the fish not moving around.
Yeah, when you're fishing over particles, they're not moving as much between mouthfuls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see that a lot, especially if you like bait spots in the edge where you can observe it. Yeah, they're fixated on a spot for ages, aren't they? And it's almost like they're sifting it through it, and you can see stuff coming through the gill rakers, but they'll sit on that spot and just not move for a long time.
That being said, I've seen fish suck up a boilie and like chew that over for a while. So I'm not saying it's a foolproof thing every single time, but I think if you were to say on the whole, they're going to be moving much less with particle compared to boilie, or flicking out a few nuts, etc. That being said, with nuts, I feel again that they can take a few mouthfuls of nuts and then they can be chewing for a while. They can go off and chew, and that can present other issues as well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just to keep things simplistic, I think I would when fishing over particle, I'll use if I'm close to the particle, I'll use a shorter hook link. What I actually do a lot of the time is I will fish my rods, whether I'm fishing particle, boil, or whatever, I'll fish my rods off the spot. Like, I will happily not have a rod on the spot. I could have all of my rods not within a rod length and a half of the baited area, and I'd be happy. Especially if I knew that the fish were either passing through there, or if they went off on that route to chew the food or digest the food, or just have a little break from eating, whatever they're doing. You often find fish will feed on an area, then they'll swan off, no pun intended, and then they'll come back. Getting a rod on that route, that's a big thing, I think, because they're generally well, maybe they look, who knows, maybe they would view that as like a stray bait that's safe, as well as that they're definitely moving more when they come in to pick it up. They don't just they could do, but generally they don't just put the brakes on to suck it up. Although, to be fair, they can do. Bearing in mind, I like doing that usually on some kind of sliding rig on a helicopter. So I like fishing over weed. I love presenting a bait over weed. Yes, I know some people wouldn't like that. I do, and in that scenario, I think it's fantastic. It's like a bait is gone rogue and it's just sitting on a piece of weed. Whether it really works like that, I don't know. But in my head, that seems very safe for a carp, and it works, man. Yeah. It works.
That's hilarious. Bait's gone rogue. Here's one for you, dude. Now, I know you've been sort of watching fish feeding recently. I know you've been doing a lot of testing and stuff on some waters where you've got that opportunity. Yeah. Now, I've never seen this sort of spoken about, or I've not thought about it a great deal, but as we're talking about it, so when we talk about sort of fish feeding, and we all know that once you get a real sort of feeding scenario, they can get sort of competitive, and that's when they sort of become more likely to slip up. But for example, with boilie, I've got fish feeding in a frenzy, like super, super competitive. And with particle, that's never something you really see, is it? Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
See, I've seen a single fish like tear up the bottom, but I'm talking about when you've got like a group of fish sort of coming in and feeding. And I've always found with particle, they're just like we were saying about how they hold on the spot for longer, and I just think, go on.
So you're basically saying you haven't seen them feed as enthusiastically on particles as you have with boilie? Is that it? Or?
I think so, mate. Whether it's because I'm introducing less, and to be honest with you, when I'm sort of, number one, I imagine if you put me in a controlled environment, it might be a little bit different. But often when I'm feeding with sort of like boilie or homemade bait or something, it's something I take in my head like great pleasure out of, and I really want to try and make that situation, see them feeding hard. Do you know what I mean? So I'm probably introducing like little and often. I'll get them feeding, and then really sort of, when you can sort of introduce bait sort of at the right intervals to really keep them interested. Do you understand?
Not so much, no.
Whereas I think if I was feeding sort of particle, I've done this in the past, I might just sort of like introduce a load, and then sort of like watch the fish come in and mull over it. But I've seen definitely a more aggressive reaction from fish over sort of like a boilie or even a pellet type bait, if I'm honest, than a particle.
You know why, don't you?
Go on, Sam.
Just because the baits you roll are amazing, Pete.
Amazing.
Magic. Magic boilies, that's why.
Well, I catch so many,
beans,
mate.
But they're boilies.
That's why I'm top rod.
Yeah.
This is sarcasm.
Are you your particles? I mean, we're just lumping all particles together. What particles are you referring to? Well, like what would you lump in that bracket that you've witnessed this on?
Do you know what? Like, primarily, I'm talking maize. I'm talking hemp, maize and hemp, really. Are the ones where I've sort of really watched fish feed.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I can't say that matches up with what I've witnessed. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, mate. I don't think you should start doubting yourself and say, "Oh, maybe it's how I feed them." I can't say I've witnessed that. If any listeners have, I'd love to hear from you. I really, really would. Maybe it's the boilies that you fed. I mean, obviously, I know you go balls deep on your attractor profile and what's in the bait. You're very knowledgeable, even though you wouldn't admit it. So maybe, I mean, are you putting much on your particles? Are you adding liquids and powders? Are you zanging them up a little bit? Maybe that's it.
Do you know what? Again, this is like what I was saying about if I put myself in a controlled environment and actually looked at what I was doing, I could tell you now that my sort of bait that I roll and make myself has about, I don't know, 99% more effort and attention to detail than my particle. 9 times out of 10, my particle, I've soaked it, I've boiled it, I've put it in a bucket, and I've gone down to the lake, you know.
Yeah.
This year's been a bit different, like with my nuts, from talking with you and fermenting nuts and things.
I want to say something. Yeah, I was going to say it. I'll cut you off. Sorry, mate. Carry on.
No, that's it. I was just sort of like rounding off. But go on. You're gonna talk about your nuts, aren't you?
I'm going to talk about my nuts. Yeah, when you get certain fermented particles, like honestly, I think you'll see. I know you're going to go down the route of not necessarily fermenting them, but letting them turn. Once they do that, like honestly, I've seen the fish go. You know, I don't want to say like go crazy or anything, but I've seen them feed very enthusiastically on that. So maybe now that you're getting into your sugars and your fermentation, etc., maybe you'll change your mind, mate. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Put it this way: the lake I'm fishing and spending my time on at the moment, I've got no real opportunities to watch fish feed. I've sort of addressed it before, I think, on the podcast. It's such a bad algal bloom at the moment, which looks like it's maybe starting to clear up a little bit. But the water's really coloured. It's hard. It makes the fishing hard.
Yeah, the oxygen's going to crash at night as well. So you might find that you're actually better off fishing in the day when there's more oxygen.
Makes sense.
The fish are going to be much more willing to feed because they can obviously digest the food much more efficiently. But just to backtrack, isn't that great? Like that's one of the great things about angling. Your experience is very different from mine. You could go off on your route and say just boilies is what gets them feed, and it's going to be. You could be dead set on that, and you just go that route, right? I could say, oh, it's just particles like that. That's what gets them feeding better. I could be dead set, go on that route. We might not even both of us be wrong, although I guess there is an element of incorrectness to some of us. But we could both go on our own directions with it and both get equal success. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy thing, you know? There's so many variables. There's so much to it. And maybe I think a lot of it is maybe how you angle for fish as well. Probably that's got to come into it. I don't know. It's fascinating. People have totally different experiences of places, and it's not that one is right or one is wrong. They could both get great results or both get shit results, but they're coming from different angles, and that's the thing. And as well, let's not forget, it does kind of come back to, you know, they are very keen on feeding. Like they want to feed. It's just creating the right scenario sometimes. Anyway, anything else you want to add on to the particles bit?
No.
Cool. The next part of the question was, I'm trying to find it. views on fish meals. I'll keep that short. Yeah, fantastic, very good. I don't know if this is from an ethical point of view, as in, you know, fish stocks, etc. I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know whether it's a good thing or bad thing, and that's not that I'm ignorant to it. It's just there is pros and cons for each. You know, it's byproducts of the fishing industry. Well, that's actually good that there's being a use made. Other people say, well, no, that's not it. I don't know. As far as ethics go, as far as what fish like, fish meals, absolutely. But not all fish meals are created equal, of course. Fish meals, anything to add to that, Pete?
No, I think I like when you talk about the ethics. It like gives me a little chuckle. It just sort of sums you up, mate. You analyse things quite ethically these days. I think it's a good thing, mate. It's the byproduct. It's animal feed, isn't it? It's a byproduct of the fish industry that we predominantly use. So I think if there weren't fish meals, it would be fish going to waste. So I think ethically, I've got no problems with it. Yeah, fish love them, don't they? I think that was one of the things, like a takeaway from the Sean Harrison interview, wasn't it? We were both amazed that he's never really used fish meals in any of his commercial baits. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just yeah, it's huge.
Although interestingly, I'm definitely a fish meal guy, and marine products. Like, I use a lot of that. Whereas you, Pete, you tend to go away from the fish products, don't you, and marine products?
I think I do, but it's to my own detriment. To be honest, yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking recently about my fishing and my bait. And do you know what? All my little thoughts in my head, they all boil down to one thing, and it's just I really just want to start rolling my own bait again, mate.
Yeah.
I've got a real problem with it.
Yeah.
I like a creamy sort of birdseed bait. Do you know what? I don't know why I've got more confidence in a bait like that from a commercial manufacturer than I would from sort of their fish meal baits. I don't know why. Weird. But
I don't.
For me, I want to roll my own bait again. We're going to go down a rabbit hole here. But I've been putting sort of a lot of thought into sort of like thinking about the whole bait process again. And do I have the time to do it? Probably, if I wanted to. If I was that keen on doing it, I'd be rolling small batches again at a time. But I've got a few sort of ideas in my head of what I want to do.
I tell you what, put that on hold, mate, because I think there's a question coming up in a little bit that will bleed into that perfectly.
Okay.
So hold that thought. Sorry, I just want to really quickly go back to particles and just literally say a sentence on it. Obviously, time of year is big on particles as well. Like, as we record this, it's the 2nd of August, my anniversary. And yeah, I mean, you know, we're edging.
Sorry, you're in the bad books. You're doing a poddy on your anniversary of your missus.
Yeah,
Use hero. Mate.
It's fine. Let's get back on track. What was I going to say? I was going to say something.
Particle, time of year.
Damn it. Oh, yes, that's it. Time of year. So yeah, I mean, we're edging to, obviously we're still summer, but we are edging towards autumn. I will be using predominantly boilie and liquids and powders, of course, in autumn. So I would step away from the particles. I'd be using particles now. I mean, obviously, you know, it's nothing new there. A lot of people obviously use particles in the summer. But yeah, for me, I like to really hammer the boilies out once things get a little bit cooler. Anything to expand on that, mate?
No, I don't think so, dude.
Okay. And last point from Fishing Fletch is pre-baiting. Views on pre-baiting. Yeah, do it, absolutely. I do it as much as I can. I must say, the lakes that I fish these days are a lot busier than you know, I don't have places to myself anymore as I did in Cornwall. But yeah, so answer the question, baiting up is a huge game changer. obviously is providing the fish are actually going there and eating it, it will make life so much easier. I mean, if I look at my recent decent, what I'd call hit, like a brace of 3, doesn't happen very often, but that's from pre-baiting, and that would not have happened without that pre-baiting. When I say a brace, I mean 3 within the course of an hour or 2. Technically, I guess that's not a brace, but it's as close to as I come to a brace. So yeah, definitely pre-bait if you can, for sure. Not only to get spots going, but also to get your bait established as well. But getting the spots going is the big thing. I'll happily put different bait every single time in if I need to. I don't usually, but I'd still happily do that. The main thing is that bait going on that spot regularly. What are your thoughts, Pete?
Mirror exactly what you're saying, dude. If you can pre-bait, then 100% do it. Again, it's nice to keep it to yourself for sure. I don't think I've been lucky with my pre-baiting. There's another chap actually who's fishing and sort of campaigning this swim in the same sort of areas that I've been targeting in the lake. And we've sort of had a little chat about it, and it's cool. But I think I'm fishing sort of different areas from the swim than he would be anyway. And my bait's been going in different areas. But yeah, do it, man. Do it. And like you were saying about, again, I guess it's like an ethics thing, and like you've had your hands burnt. You were saying about sort of people fishing on your spots. At the end of the day, like fishing's fishing. Everyone's a member of the lake and they can fish where they want. But what I would do if somebody was to approach you as well and sort of start to say, "Oh, mate, I've been, really baiting in this swim, such and such," just be like, "Dude, just don't tell me. Don't want to know." Like, cool.
Exactly.
Just, like, that's really cool, dude. I've been doing my thing. You do your thing. It's great if we're getting fish out of the same sort of spot, but you just don't want to know. Don't let them tell you where they've been baiting, because then they've got the ethical high ground on you. Do you know what I mean?
Not only that, if you then see a fish there and you like, what you're gonna do, like or if you've caught a fish from there and then they come and tell you, I've been preyed up, it's like, okay, great, now I don't feel like I've earned that fish. So yeah, absolutely, I keep it to myself for that reason as well, like for them as well as me, mostly for myself, I'm not gonna lie. But it's just keep it to yourself, fellas. Unless there's a few of you on and you're getting that mutual respect thing going. I love those things.
But that's the kind of place where everyone's got their own sort of spots going, and it's just
there's a few thing. Good anglers on a very hard water, and it's like you almost wouldn't. I don't know how to put it. You got your own thing. You know what's working. You're better off just sticking to your own thing anyway, regardless of that, even if you didn't have any ethics. But yeah. Okay, cool. Next question is from Tivy. I hope I'm pronouncing these right. Tivy. Things that are a good edge and things that are fads. I think that's a bloody good question, and I wish I'd prepared for it a little bit. I could have. Yes, I know that, but I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I got one that's just jumped out at me. Actually, it jumped out at me when I was copying and pasting these earlier. Should I start with that?
Yeah.
The Corda, I don't know what they're called. I think they're called HeliSafe, actually. Corda HeliSafe. Yeah. Basically, it's this little thing that you put on the end of your leader that will you can quickly attach or detach your lead. And when you get a take and the hook link engages in the end of it, if you decide to use it that way, the lead will drop off, which is absolutely a game changer. I fish really weedy waters. Some of them I can get away with having the lead on if I have a little break, but a lot of the time I just need to get rid of that lead, and they are so convenient. They work so well. That is definitely not a fad in my opinion. I think they're bloody fantastic.
I completely agree with you, mate. They're on both my rods at the moment. They are a bit of some product engineering going on there. Someone's really thought about it and put something together. Yeah, I agree as well. Fish safety. In fact, I use their sort of it's sort of like the whole HeliSafe system, I guess, with the bead that sits on the little rubber thing on the line and ejects. I just think it's brilliant, to be honest. It's I think Corda's product development's pretty good, mate. I know there's a lot of Corda haters out there.
I'll be honest, I used to be one of them,
dude,
years ago, because they were bringing it. I guess they were starting to bring carp angling to the masses, and it's almost like, oh, I kind of want to keep it all to myself, and it's just that commercialism of carp angling, which I strongly dislike. But I think Corda, I mean, great company. They seem like a great company. They make some fantastic products. Seems like their ethics are definitely on point. I think, more power to them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, mate. Their podcast is very good. And I always used to moan about Ali Hamidi. I wasn't a fan, but sort of as I've got older, mate, have you listened to his podcast? That guy has...
I did.
I think, right, what quite an inspirational guy. Like, sort of like where he's from, his life battles, and I think his work ethic, and kind of what he's done for carp fishing, and what he brings to carp fishing from a commercial point of view regarding like the TV shows and stuff. There's a lot of hard work that he puts into that. I think it's amazing.
Absolutely.
I thought you were going to say no. I thought you were going to say slate him.
I don't know. I think the type of angling he does probably isn't my cup of tea, to be honest, but I'm sure he's a lovely bloke, and I've no doubt he is on point in his role. Whatever his role is, I believe is he like in charge of media, something, I don't know, something like that, or promoting the brand. I'm trying to think of the correct word, and it's escaping
like a brand
me.
manager.
But I think he got them on TV and things like that. So yeah, I'm sure he's phenomenal at that kind of stuff. And I'm no doubt a lovely bloke, really, really nice bloke. I always associate him with fishing commercials for some reason. I don't know why. He probably doesn't. Don't get me wrong. It's just what I've got in my head, which isn't my kind of thing. But I'm probably wrong on that. He probably, it turns out he's fishes bloody. I don't know.
Do you watch the Monster
Frampton or
Carps?
something?
Do you watch Monster Carp on TV?
No.
Have you not watched them? Mate, they're good. They're good, entertaining carp viewing. Mate, there's one at Cassian, right? And Neil Spooner catches like this 70-something pound fish. Mate, it's just fucking insane. Like, it's worth a watch just for that. I think that's one of the places, that's somewhere in my life I've got to do before I die kind of thing, mate, is Cassian. We ought to get that in the diary. I'd love to do it.
Mate, when I came down to see you, I said about a foreign voyage, and you were like, "Won't happen for years, mate. Can't."
Mate, yeah, I still stand by that.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, okay. This is just on the bucket list, mate. It's gonna happen, mate. But yeah, Cassian's got to happen at some point.
Yeah, you're the most pussy whip person I've ever met, just to let you know that.
Yeah, well, thanks.
We'll move on from it, but that's all right.
Mate, I've got
You're welcome.
3 little kiddies, and I don't know. Yeah, it's my life. I like it, mate. I'm happy.
That's all that matters, mate.
That's it, right. Let's just ruin the podcast.
All that matters. Yeah, don't worry about old Sam out on his own in the world. Right, so anything else that's an edge, a good edge? Baiting, liquids, powders, pastes. Not enough people are using pastes. Make up your own pastes. Don't put egg in. Yeah, they're awesome. Another good edge, good Polaroids. Climbing trees, finding the fish, spending fucking relentless hours watching the fish, seeing how they feed. I've been spending I wish I could log the amount of hours I've spent watching fish feed this year. It's been significant, I can tell you that. And I feel like I'm learning a lot. I've got this place where I am blessed, and I can watch these decent fish feed in a very unique scenario, to be honest with you. And I feel like I've just learnt so much just from that.
Can I sort of add to that, mate? So we talk about this, this lake where you're feeding the fish and you get to watch it and that. Do you ever put a rig amongst them?
Oh, do you know what? No, because I'm not allowed to fish there. That area.
Okay.
I can be there, but I'm not allowed to fish it. But I mean, crikey. Yeah, these. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. They're not like monsters. They're not like 40-pounders or anything. But I would say they're old fish. There's some hefty 20s, upper 20s there. I feel like that gives me everything I need to know. To be honest with you. Oh, yeah, okay, there's going to be some people listening, 50 all feed different, mate. Yeah, I'm sure it will, but still, watch fish. Big edge.
Any fat? So
even if you're not fishing from.
So you've spoken about some pros, mate, like you said about the good polarized glasses, etc. Cons, mate. Cons in carp fishing.
God, I can't think of any. I mean, there must be loads. Something that's not cons, a fad. Do you mean?
Yeah.
A fad. Drum and bass.
Do you think that's at the end of its reign in carp fishing?
I'll be honest, I actually quite like a lot of drum and bass, but more like the relaxed, chill stuff. I'm joking. What is a fad? That is a good question. Nothing is springing to mind, to be honest with you.
I know, but there's loads. I'm exactly the same. Like on the spot, I'm just like, oh god, mate, there's loads. And things go full circle in fishing, don't they? Do you know what I mean? Sort of like things that go into fashion and everyone's doing it, and then they go out of fashion, and then sort of like a number of years down the line, someone will release a product or something. It'll get a lot of sort of like coverage, media coverage from like the big firms, and that becomes a thing. And then
I'll tell you what I hope is a fad.
Go on.
And this will piss some people off. I cannot stand it when people shout. I've never witnessed this in the flesh, but I've, we've all flicked through the YouTube videos and seen this. When people shout when they net a fish. Come on. Wait, this is not football. You're not just scored a goal, I just don't like that. I really don't like that. In fact, I put a post up earlier of a fish going in a net, and I just put keep your voice down with a little shush emoji. Don't know why. I don't like that. It seems disrespectful.
I just got what you're on about.
Yeah, I just don't like that. I don't know. It just seems, I don't know. It annoys me. Really annoys me. I don't think I've ever seen it on the bank in the flesh.
No.
But if someone did and I shout across, I'd be like, fuck yeah.
But at the same time, mate, I don't know. When me and you have been fishing together, and one of us is sort of like, if we're there together and have netted a special fish, like, I don't know.
Probably like little kids.
Yeah, we are.
Like that, yeah.
Like there's like squirms of excitement, isn't there? And I think if we were to do that on every video we produce, people would be like, "Fucking hell, these guys."
Yeah, but we're not doing that if we're like netting a 20 or something. Like,
I know.
That I think they do it over everything. But yeah, that I hope that's a fad. What else? I don't know. Can't think of anything. There's probably loads. There's probably loads. Sorry, Tivy. We've probably not done you much justice on that, buddy. Move on, Pete.
Moving on. Go on. Yeah, next one.
Wayne Birmingham, not Wayne Birmingham. Wayne Birmingham. Mm-hmm. Just to clarify his username. Hi guys, love the podcast. Nice and refreshing. I do have a listener's question, please. Yeah, absolutely. How do I get liquids into my swim? Hey, this is a good one. How do I get liquids into my swim without actually introducing any bait? Ooh. I want to start using liquids a lot more. Thanks in advance and keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Wayne. I guess your name's Wayne. Great question. I'm going to be a bit of an anal dickhead and say, well, liquids are a bait, aren't they? Because you're attracting a fish. But aside from that, if it's just the liquids, sorry, just the liquids, great question. You can, of course, use solid PVA bags, obviously, as long as they don't dissolve the bags. You can also use stones. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but you can basically soak stones or rocks. Obviously, some types of rock work better than others. Don't ask me which types. Well, I don't know what the different rocks are called. You have to experiment if you want a quick. Yeah, if you want a quick leakage, get a real porous one. If you want slower leakage, get a slightly less porous one, of course. But yeah, soaking rocks in liquids and chucking them in an area will literally drip feed your liquid into the area. And as well as that, don't forget, your liquid, some of the thicker liquids are going to hold into the rock a lot more than the real thin ones. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that would be what I would say the number one way of getting the liquids into the swim. Presuming it's like more of a pre-baiting thing. If it's you want to get the liquids in and you got a hook bait there, I've spoken about this before, my super soaker. You got to have a thin liquid and you got to clean the pipes out afterwards, because if there's any salt or anything, they'll crystallize. But yeah, using a super soaker with something like the squid brand fish sauce, that real thin anchovy sauce, squirting that in as long as it's within range, that's fantastic. So obviously you've got all of these free amino acids pumping in the air and some salt and you know, some other things. There'll be pH change there as well, super attractive. And then like, look what's there, you know, just your hook bait. So that's really, really good. Again, PVA bags, or of course you can use, if it's in the margin, you can use a bait spoon and just literally tip it in.
That's where a blend of liquids can come in handy. You want something heavy, don't you? Something that's going to sink to the bottom, and maybe some oil as well, so it sort of brings it up through the water column as well.
Do you? I don't know. I mean, let's just say you've seen some fish in the edge, and they're doing a little root, and you know they're going to come back. You wouldn't necessarily want it to sink. Maybe you would. Yeah, of course. Maybe you would want like a liquid that's slightly thicker than water, so it hangs up in the full column.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I
mean, we're getting very anal.
I think the stones thing you've mentioned, I think that's a real takeaway for people. That's quite a cool tip, and it's not something you see anywhere, is it? So I think that's quite a cool takeaway that someone listening to this podcast can put into their fishing easily as well. I've forgotten the chap's name. Mark, somebody, I think. I can't believe I forgot his name. And he was quite vocal about sort of using rock salt and things in the past. But I can't remember his name. Anyway, what he does on lakes where he's pretty much exclusively fishing certain swims, and I think this is a good technique as well. He basically uses like a little canister, like a little couple of litre canister or something, and you can tie it off to a bit of rope so you can retrieve it, and he'll put it in sort of margin spots and drill holes in it as well, so it's always sort of like leaking a little bit of attraction out of it. I don't know if that's something you've ever done.
It's not, and I've never thought of that, but that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. That is a great idea.
The lakes I'm fishing at the moment, it's just not really a possibility. I just don't think I'd want it. It's kind of something you have to introduce and sort of not leave it there, but you introduce it and you can come and refill it, put it back in, leave it there, so the fish become accustomed to it. It's not a foreign object anymore in the swim. They know it's there. So if you fish in a venue like that where you can do that, I think could be a serious edge, and you can pre-bait via it, you can leave it out there, the fish become used to that object like in the swim.
Very cool. That's very cool. That's a great one. Cool, good stuff. Next one is Finn Brewing. Love the pod, Sam. Can't wait for the next one after listening to 5 back-to-back on the bank yesterday. Thank you, buddy. Would love to hear some watercraft type content.
Ooh.
Like anything quirky you've noticed on waters with birds, etc. Pete knows about quirky birds. Also, as you're a bait buff, I wouldn't say that, but thanks. How do you decide on a bait for a session? Will you use the same things throughout the year? Well, I tell you what, let's come on to this because he's expanding and it's a few more questions, which is awesome. But let's go with the watercraft question first, right? So I'd love to hear some watercraft type content, like anything quirky you have noticed on waters with birds, etc. Pete?
Okay, so talking of quirky birds, so again, this is not something I've sort of experienced a lot myself, but you often hear about the bird life perhaps could spook from a big fish. Or from fish. I think I mentioned to you the other day I did a few hours floater fishing, and I was feeding the mixer, and the ducks started clearing me out, and then as soon as the fish arrived, mate, the ducks were really spooking off them, which was quite interesting to watch, sort of opened my eyes a little bit. But bird life, and to be honest, a lot of people will say by the bird life and things, I just think one thing bird life's useful is quite often you can see where other people have created spots and made this probably bait still there, so you can sort of see some going areas on a lake if that's the type of lake you're fishing, because you'll see birds diving on the spots even when there's no anglers there. But no, not really.
No, I'm trying to think. I mean, if you were on a lake and you didn't know the depths and stuff, and you saw, like tufties or something, repeatedly diving, okay, you'd know that was quite shallow if you wanted to put a rig. I don't know how that would affect things, but I'm just trying to think. Oh god, it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but maybe we shouldn't. We could go into them about carp eating feces.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely do it. They will definitely eat goose and swan poop. And some, I mean, I've seen swan poop that is like fluorescent green in the water, and I think not only have you got broken down proteins into amino acids and lots of other attractive things within the poop, you've also got pH change, and you've also got that visual thing there. But yeah, carp will definitely eat bird shit. How you'd use that to your advantage, I have no idea. that's beyond me. I don't know. Pete, anything on that?
No, nothing really. I was going to say, if you're like a duck farmer, you could collect duck shit and then add it to your like PVA mix or something. I'm just being ridiculous. Go on. It's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, obviously, use like if there's bird life there and you're going to get picked up, make sure you use a firm hook bait that isn't going to come off. Make sure that your rig will reset. Those kind of things, which I'm sure you're aware of anyway. But yeah, nothing that stands out. If I think of anything during the podcast, I will shout it out. The next question that Finn Bruin is coming on to is also how do you decide on a bait for a session? Will you use the same things throughout the year, or will you change types of hook baits post spawning, that sort of thing? I find myself going back to fluoros as something that stands out as opposed to match the hatch. I believe it may take longer to get a bite, but just my thoughts. Take it easy, pal. Yeah, interesting question. It's probably something that's like an ongoing dilemma for a lot of people. It's like, do I, quote unquote, match the hatch, or do I have something that stands out in either color or attraction, etc.? I think it's horses for courses. I mean, yes, you're going to get quicker bites from certain carp that are just, they're in there, they're hungry, they want to, snatch something up. Are you going to catch I hate to be cliche here, but are you going to catch the older, perhaps more wary fish? I don't know. I'm not confident in that scenario. If I want to get a bite, yeah, it depends on the water. If there's like 4 old fish and that's it, then I'm not using a fluoro. But if there's, relatively okay stock and I just want to get a bite, yeah, maybe I'll use something really bright. It doesn't even have to be a fluoro. It's contrast to the lake bed or whatever the hook bait is presented in front of. It's the contrast between that's important. And then, yeah, I think that can work for sure. I think white baits I don't ever really fish park lakes, but if I did, I think I'd probably go for white baits because obviously it sees a lot of bread. But yeah, for me, if generally I'm always trying to catch the older, potentially more wary fish. So for that reason, I rarely use anything bright these days. That being said, and this is silly, isn't it? I've caught some of my very best fish on bright baits. And in fact, one of the best hook baits I've ever made that was phenomenal, caught everywhere, was bright orange. You'll remember that one, Pete. So yeah, I don't know. In my head at the moment, and no doubt this will change at some point in the future, but in my head at the moment, for the fish I'm fishing for, I'm going for drab, dull baits that would match free offerings. That being said, my free offerings are diverse, not only in colour but in size as well. I don't want to condition the carp just to be sucking at one kind of rate, because then as soon as they suck in something that is got a hook and a rig attached, obviously it's got a different buoyancy, and they are masters with their mouth, much like Pete is, in a different way. So they're going to know if there's something foreign on there. So I like to get different sized baits in the area, so they're not going to be as wary when they're sucking in a rig. I think a split second can make all the difference.
Yeah. I think also, like, obviously you were showing me your hook baits and things when we had our little social. I think like your hook baits would definitely be then by no means like a fluoro bait, but it was certainly would contrast your sort of free offerings, I would suggest. I don't know how sort of light in colour your boilies, which you're using, your free offerings, would get during like when they're washing out, but they're certainly like a quite a light sort of texture, or the colour certainly.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually I've got, it depends on the time of year, but like now I'll have some nut in there. So my hook baits are similar to tiger nuts in their colour. But I have different size boilies and different colour boilies. Tends to be the liquids that I use and the powders. They make the boilies go really dark, so I scatter light coloured ones on top. So for me, it's like there's a big variance there. If I was just fishing with one boilie, like a load of 20 mil fish meals, with Robin Red or something, yeah, I probably wouldn't use them. I probably would actually. In that scenario, I probably would go to a snowman. Love snowman. Partially because you're negating the buoyancy. I think as well, it's harder to eject. I don't like round baits. I might roll them round, just for ease, but I'll cut a side off, because if you've got to think, if a fish is spitting out something that's round, it's going to go out quite evenly, in my head at least, in theory. If it's not shaped like that, it's going to go out awkward. So I want the most buoyant part of the hook bait at the top, with the hook hanging below it. So if they blow it out, should be that the most buoyant part of the hook bait goes out in the mouth first, and then it's going to leave the hook trailing. And I can't really explain it in my mind, with my mouth, sorry, but in my mind that's definitely how it should be. I'm very, very confident in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. And going back to the sort of pre-spawning, post-spawning, certainly in my fishing, before they spawn, sort of, I guess, yeah, certainly before they spawn, I'd be adding some sort of salt to my mix, or, with particle especially, adding some salt. And then I think after post-spawning, there's a lot of talk about lysine. It's one of the amino acids that they can't produce themselves, so they have to actively find it in their diet. So any baits you can have sort of like with a high lysine content, like you say, if you can put it into a liquid so it's free form in the water as well, I think personally that's an edge that can help post spawning. And I always turn to yeast as well for the sort of like the B vitamins and the vitamin content in yeast after spawning as well, because I think they'll be hunting that out a little bit more. Are you sort of quite generic on that? Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%, mate. Yeah, salt, yeast, lysine. I mean, for me, I want that all the time anyway. I think that's just a very important amino acid to have abundant at all times. But so yeah, I mean, maybe they need it more at that time. I don't know, but I definitely focus on salt and the B vitamins as well. And yeah, yeast is obviously awesome for that. So yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add to that. I agree with you, mate.
Yeah, cool.
So thank you for that question. Next one is Jinkudo. Jinkudo. Sounds very Japanese, probably not. What is the best way to get into bait making to save money?
I just can't think of an answer other than you're not going to save money.
Well, you could. No, that's not fair. You could. Depends what you want to come out with. I mean, I've rolled some very expensive bait. I know you have. Well, I'm sure you have as well, Pete. Well, yeah, I know you have. We've rolled it together. But I've also, done some crazy products that have been outrageously expensive. To be fair, you can definitely roll your own and save money. The initial outlay of the rolling tables, etc., is going to cost you a bit. But in terms of actual mix, the best way to get into bait making to save money, I'd say the best way to get into it is probably to buy a ready-made base mix. The best way to get into it to save money. Buy a ready-made base mix by someone like AA Baits. I don't know if they're still going. It'll be fairly cheap, and then add in some good liquids that don't cost the earth. Molasses would be good. I wouldn't recommend it if there's bream, something like that. And yeah, just knock it up. You don't need to put a flavour in there. That'll add cost to it, and it might not even enhance it. It might detract from it. And yeah, I would say probably buy a ready-made, ready-formulated base mix. Depends how you're going to fish, dude. I mean, it depends what kind of waters you're fishing. You're fishing a runs water. I first started with soya semo baits with some flavouring, like, some like vanilla essence from my mum's kitchen or something like that. Caught on it. Wouldn't say it was the best, but I'd probably need to know more about where you're fishing and what kind of fish you're fishing for before I could answer that. Don't know about you, Pete. You got any nuggets, any dimes for Jinkudu?
Everything I do with bait ends up getting more and more expensive, and I think the more sort of like knowledge you have, not even more knowledge you have, but the more you learn, the more you sort of thirst to learn, and then you're on a hunt for sort of like that magic ingredient, and it becomes expensive. It can really add to your costs of fishing.
If it's purely about money, to save money, particles are your friend, nuts are your friend. You can catch on them in winter. You just apply them differently. That's what I would say if it's all about money. I would be more confident if I say had, 10 quid to go fishing with for a fortnight. I'd be spending that on particles, not on knocking up a boilie. That's what I would say. If you're on a budget, mate, that is definitely what I would say. Go with particles or even meat, luncheon meat, something like that. Although luncheon meat's not that cheap anymore. Yeah, that's what I would do.
That's it. And one thing I'd say to people who are buying sort of like a ready-made base mix is just be aware of like the soluble content that's already in it, because you don't want to be wasting your time rolling baits, I guess, that are super soluble and turn to mush instantly. I've sort of in the past, when I'd sort of like bought like a ready-made mix and I was adding my own attractor package, I had to go very low, put it that way, on the soluble ingredients I was adding, because otherwise the bait was just super struggling. So it might be worth sort of, I don't know, speaking to the provider or finding out if they've got sort of like soluble milk proteins or a calf sort of milk replacer in there already. Because I think
if it's sorry, mate. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think sort of if somebody's looking to buy their own pre-made base mix and add their own attractor profile, a lot of the attractive ingredients you put in there are super soluble. That was it really.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, if they're buying a cheap ready-made base mix, it's probably not going to be that soluble. It will be made, with the beginner in mind. Obviously, a lot of the soluble ingredients are quite expensive as well. So it might just have like a calf milk replacer in there, or at lower levels or something like that. So I don't know if it will be that much of an issue for them. But yeah, definitely check the solubility. For sure. Next question, John Wilkinson. Hi, Sam and Pete. When's the next podcast dropping? Soon. Obviously he's asked this a while ago. Last one where you recommended the active CSL, salmigo and squid fish sauce. What quantities of each do you recommend? I actually replied to him on Messenger, but just for everyone else, because I presume if he's got the question, other people will as well. Depends what you're doing. If you are rehydrating baits, or not rehydrating them, but you just want to get a load of liquid in the bait, then you're going to want to go for something that isn't too thick. And then, obviously the CSL and the anchovy sauce, the squid brownfish sauce, they're very thin. The salmigo is thicker. So I'd probably go with a third of each, 1 part CSL, 1 part salmigo, 1 part squid brownfish sauce. That's going to be fairly liquidy. It's going to soak into the boilie fairly easily. You could even do a round with that just to get the liquid right in there. And then you could just go pure salmigo over the top, which is thicker and it's going to cling to the boilie more. And therefore it's going to get slower leak off attraction. Depends if you want if you want all of that liquid to flood out quickly, you want it a thinner liquid. If you want it to stick around, and be more active overnight or something like that, then you'd want it thicker. So you'd play with your quantities like that. But in terms of balancing it up for attractiveness and balancing aminos, I wouldn't worry about that. I would prioritize the viscosity, the thickness of the liquid over that side of things, because I don't see there a combination that would be less effective than another, if that makes sense. You want to add to that, Pete?
No, mate, that's your little mix of liquids. Honestly, I've not used the three in conjunction, so I wouldn't be able to comment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good mix. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's not like I've put those together, because everything is balanced and it's amazing. It's a very good mix. Don't get me wrong. Very good. I'd happily just use those three liquids forevermore. I really would. I wouldn't actually, because I love experimenting with different things, but you know what I mean? I'd be confident in that. But yeah, whatever works, depends on the thickness that you want. I guess you'd come to a point where you would want the squid brand fish sauce and the CSL in equal parts, to be honest with you. And then it would be the Salmigo that I would vary, just as I said before, just to get the different thickness. But the CSL and squid brand in equal parts for sure is the way to go with that, I believe, unless for some reason you wanted a lot more salt in there, which you'd get from the anchovy sauce, the squid brand fish sauce, in which case you'd want to up that, or you could just add some salt in by hand in powder form. There we go. Hopefully that helps.
Got a question for you.
Next question.
Got one for you now. Sorry, dude. The fish sauce. Yeah. Have you added salt to it? As in, have you tried to make it saltier? And because it's so salty, and this is just literally just at my own thinking, have you been able to dissolve much more salt into that sauce?
I've never put salt just in that pure sauce, but I've chucked more salt in a bucket with a load of liquids, and that has been in there.
No, that's
it.
It's super salty in there. I mean, you're talking in previous episode like about the water pistol and how it clogs the tubes. It is super salty. I think, especially, what we're saying about pre-spawning, I think it's really got its place as a bait soak. I really do.
I think it's about a quarter salt. I want to say that. I might be wrong on that. But I think a quarter of it is salt, which is a lot. A hell of a lot. So yeah, it's very salty. Very, very salty. Yeah.
Go on then. So the next one. Have we got any more?
Yep, we've got some more. Next one is oh no. Did I who do we have? I got confused. Oh yeah, next one is also about squid brand fish sauce, which threw me. Stefan Reed. You mentioned squid brand fish sauce several times during your bait talks. May I ask what you use it for? As a bait soak to hydrate boilies, or as a liquid carrier for powder? Both, Stefan. I would use it to hydrate baits, boilies, or add to particles, and I would also use it to mix in with powder. Yeah, I would use both, mate. It's definitely got its purposes in both. As a carrier for powder, I never have like a liquid and then mix the powder in. I just, I every time I go fishing the day before, I get, or it depends if I'm curing them or doing a few days before, but before I go fishing or before I'm going to bait up, I'll put a load of boilie in a bucket or particle in a bucket, and then I'll put the mix of liquids on top. Sometimes I'll mix the liquids first in a container, and I'll put them on top, and then I just sprinkle the powder over and mix it in as and when I need it. I don't know if you mean like put a powder in the liquid and then keep it on the shelf. I wouldn't do that, just in case the powder went funny somehow. But yeah, both ways, both hydrate boilies and as a accompaniment to powder.
One thing I've done with the fish sauce is I have, like you were saying about mixing it with the powder, I've done that as a boilie soak with the yeast, and you can really dissolve like a yeast powder into the fish sauce quite easily. That's something I have done in the past. But just jumping in on the end there, mate.
No, that's good, mate. That's good. Yeah, very good. Good stuff. Next one is Liam West. Hi, pal. Just listen to your third podcast. Currently listen to your second one. Love something you touched on in the third podcast about liquids being underused. Yeah, I think they are. Amazing information, something I thought about a lot and need to pursue more. In regards of putting liquid in over a long period of time, would you, I love this, I remember this, would you hang a bag in the branches full of liquid and pin a small hole in? Love the water pistol idea. Thank you. Liam, by the way, for saying you love the water pistol idea. Pete slated it. I think it's awesome. Would I hang a bag of liquid in the branches, full of liquid, and put a pinprick in? Yeah, absolutely I would. That's a great idea. I've never done it. It reminds me of the old trick. Obviously, it only works in margins where there's an overhanging tree, but the old trick of getting a dead animal, hanging the carcass in the tree in the warmer months and letting, obviously, the flies settle in it, and then you'll drip feed that spot with maggots. Obviously, as the maggots come out of the carcass, you're literally drip feeding a spot full of maggots from the dead carcass. I love that.
That is
I think that sounds so cool.
It's so savage.
Yeah, it's savage. But yeah, I would do that. Hell yeah. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I guess just obviously the gravitational pull, unless it was a very thick liquid and a very small hole, I imagine it would empty out fairly quick. But then I suppose, actually, if you've got something like the new, like the tuna hydrolysate, that's very thick, isn't it? Very tar-like substance. Thicker than the Salmigo that I keep banging on about. I guess that would pour out real slow. Yeah, I love that idea. Never done it, but yeah, go ahead and do it and let me know how it goes. Would you do that, Pete?
Do you know what? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Would I do it? Probably not. I don't know. Depends on the lake you're fishing, doesn't it? If I had a lake, I mean, oh, you could do it. Actually, no, you could do it on. I was just thinking of sort of like tying it up and leaving it there, and then coming back like a couple of days later to fish, kind of thing. But actually, during a session as well, though, it could be really good, couldn't it? Just dripping a bit of liquid attractant into the lake all the time. It's actually a fascinating idea.
Dot islands.
Go on.
There's a lot of dot islands, isn't there, on your water?
Yes, there is, but you've got to get to them, mate. I'm not swimming, put it that way.
Your boat?
Yeah, just no.
Yeah, love that idea. That's awesome idea, Liam. Nice one, mate. That's it from the older questions. I mean, we had other questions, but they were just probably not worth us expanding on. Maybe. But I did put a post, I put a story on Instagram, and we got a couple of questions there. So first up from that is 9 to 5 Carper. He's obviously carping 9 to 5. And he said, would be interested in hearing your views on particles versus boilies when you'd use them. This will follow on nicely from what we spoke about earlier, I guess. How you'd change your rigs for each method. How carp feed differently. Are carp more catchable using straight boilies? I have recently changed from fishing over particle to just boilies, and my catch rate has gone up, something I'm considering a lot more in my fishing. Love the podcast. Keep them coming, lads. Oh, yeah, and I replied, and I've included my reply, actually, just because it's poignant. I put, what is the venue you're fishing like? Easy, hard, how many fish in there, how big are they, etc. And he has put the water. I've seen the increase in catches on what with the changes to boilies is pretty well stocked, so not particularly difficult, and carp to upper 20s. But recently started a Park Lake campaign, real low stock and struggling to crack the code over there. Pete, take it away, my man.
Dude,
Go for it.
I'm not going to lie. I actually switched off. You're going to have to read the question again.
Okay, mate. Is it like my droll, monotone voice?
I didn't realise you went in from
sleep?
answering a question into another question. Sorry, dude.
All right. Well, no, because I wanted him to clarify his scenario so we can answer properly. So, right, pay attention, Pete. Interested in hearing our views on particles versus boilies, when you'd use them, how you'd change your rigs for each methods. I will answer that one real quick right now. Shorter rigs for particles, longer rigs for boilie. Do you agree, Pete?
Yeah, and shorter hair as well.
And a shorter hair for Pete. Okay. Actually, I would agree with that as well. How carp feed differently? Are carp more catchable, better hooking opportunity using straight boilies? Yeah, we touched on that earlier, so I think we've covered that section. Carp will definitely be easier to hook in that respect when there's boilies spread around. Or, nuts could work as well, or something similar. So yeah, absolutely, you're right on that, mate. They're going to be, I don't know if you can say they're easier to catch. I think the hooking potential is more efficient when they're moving. But you could then say you could probably get them feeding with a bit more gusto in a smaller area. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the day. Really hard to answer that one. But yeah, sure, the rig mechanics are generally going to work much more favourably when the carp are moving in between baits, which they tend to do more on the bigger singular baits rather than a carpet of particle. So yeah, particles versus boilies, when we'd use them, it depends. I mean, as I said, I like boilies, coming into autumn. I think animals are hardwired to know what is a calorically dense food, and they will seek that out when they need to. I think they know when things are easier to digest and that's more favourable to them, etc., etc., etc. I think at that time of year they definitely want in boilies. I would say that for the spring as well. Well, I know everyone, you're just on the fluoros, small baits on the spring, not many baits out there. I see a lot of people doing that, but again, I'd like to get on the boilies and get the feed going in there. Summer I ease off a little bit. I don't bait as much unless I think there's potential for a big hit, which doesn't really happen, bearing in mind my kind of fishing is quick overnighters or day sessions stalking. I don't get much time on the bank, so I fish accordingly. But yeah, it just depends, mate. It really there's too many scenarios. Other than what I've just said, I wouldn't really know how to give you a concise answer. I guess over the years you just kind of get a feeling like whether you need to apply some particle or some boilie. I think I just go off how the situation feels to me, rather than a preconceived idea of, oh, it's July, I'm going to use particles. I don't do that as much. Sure, that plays in a bit, but it's more just what I feel the situation would lend itself to. I don't know if you've got any ideas or any opinions on that, Pete.
I think no, like you said, it depends on the situation in hand, doesn't it? Every lake's different, and everybody approaches differently. I know from my experience, sort of from a broad spectrum of my sort of fishing, I'm a bait guy, and I like tinkering with bait and boilies, so that tends to be the most of my approach, and certainly the most amount of time I put into a certain type of fishing anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm just reading what he said again. He said that he's recently changed from fishing over particle to just boilie, and his catch rate has gone up. And it's something that he's considering a lot more in his fishing. Yeah, I mean, absolutely look at that. Is that due to the venue? Is it due to that time of the year? Maybe they're feeding up, or is it due to your particles are not quite on point, or there's too much particle going in? I mean, it's easy to cape a load of particle in if you're using like a bait spoon or something in the margin. So maybe it's taking them a longer to work through that massive food. There's lots of different variables I feel like you need to consider. As well as that, there's definitely some venues where the bigger fish come out on boilies. I've definitely believed that. Now, whether that's a feed habit thing, I don't know. I wouldn't like to say. I don't know if you found that, Pete. Have you found like some venues like the bigger fish take the boilies, or maybe vice versa?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think sort of like big fish, they do like a boilie, don't they? But it's probably a lot of the reason, especially on a commercial fishery, why they're the bigger fish.
That's very true. Yeah, that's a very good point. Is it that they're bigger fish because they just eat a lot of boilie? Yeah, very good point. I don't know. I think we've covered all of that guy's questions. I guess maybe I'm wrong. I guess he's kind of like honing his skills on this lake with the upper 20s before he goes on to the lower stock venue. If that's the case, mate, I might be wrong, but if that is the case, I would say, yeah, I hear you. I get where you're coming from, but to treat it as a completely different venue. Those fish could have completely different habits. You could not get a bite on boilies and they're only, sifting through particles. You might have to go to the extent of super gluing a few grains of hemp on a hair or something like that. I've read people do that. I've never done that myself. So yeah, treat it treat every venue differently, and I would say even treat every every session differently to an extent. Of course, we get things going, we get ideas, and we stick to it, but you don't know what's going to happen on the day. I mean, if you look at match anglers, they're constantly changing. They don't suss a venue and be like, yep, this venue, I need red maggots and I need to do that. No, they're changing. They're seeing what's working on the day. Same as the river anglers. I think us carp boys and girls, sometimes we can get a little bit too stuck in our ways. And I think switching things up a little bit sooner is generally, it often pays off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with you, dude.
Yeah, if he's campaigning a park lake, get that bait going in, mate. I would say that was the biggest thing. That is going to be something that overrides a lot. Get that bait going. Make sure they're clearing that area out, and make sure they're eating on it, and just keep that bait going. The more weeks that roll by that they're feeding there without being fished for, depending on who has to fish in the lake, I feel that is the better. Get their confidence up there, get them really getting their heads down, and then reap the rewards. That's what I would say. Anything else before I hop on?
No.
Move on. Okay. John Boodoo Angling says, Pete mentioned reading some koi papers for research. Where does he source these? Then he's got a couple more questions as well. Where'd you source them, Pete? Google?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, all from
shed
Google.
loads.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I think the key to it is sort of pursue an avenue of research that you want to sort of go down. There's thousands of koi papers out there, absolutely thousands, but you can get completely lost in it, and a lot of it's really not relevant to carp fishing, I'd say. So pursue an avenue, like there's a certain ingredient, there's a certain sort of like, whether it's like a gustatory or olfactory sort of response you want from the carp, sort of like target that, find an ingredient or something, or a type of ingredient, whether it be like an ammonia compound or an acid, an organic acid, and then sort of like go from that avenue. I would so sort of like find your ingredient, find your sort of thing you want to research, and then put that to a sort of like a koi paper search. Yeah, what about you, Sam?
I think that's probably how I've learnt most, is getting an idea or a concept or an ingredient I want to explore, and then going down that rabbit hole, and that will take you through other rabbit holes, and you'll learn like that. And it will take you, you'll be searching for something, and then you'll read something else, and that'll catch you, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I'll put that on the back burner, and then you'll go back to it, or you'll just pursue it then, and all of a sudden you're kind of literally branching out into many different areas, and then you're consuming it. That's the best way to learn, I feel, rather than just searching papers for what's the best, amino acid or whatever. Yeah, sure, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying, I'm saying when you get more specific about things, generally that'll take you to broader places, even though that sounds counterintuitive. I mean, the amount of I've been very the amount of times I've been very set on pursuing something, and I've looked into it and looked into it and looked into it, and as a result of that, I've just been like, do you know what? No, I need to look into this now, because this is something that's recurring. There's maybe some mileage here, and you'll go off on a tangent like that. So I guess what we're saying is, get stuck in. Just get stuck in, and you will rapidly find more and more research papers. But top tip, wish I had done this from the beginning. Store them all in a file so you can go back for future reference. Big edge.
Big edge.
It is, mate.
I know.
It
yeah.
is.
Well,
how many times have you like, it's been a year or two, or maybe even longer, or maybe even a month, and you've been like, shit, where did I read that? And you can't find it,
mate. 100%.
This is what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is like that's how you learn things. Like, not everything. Google's great for SEO. You'll search a word and a lot will come up, but it doesn't always work like that. A lot of things you'll find by accident, which is why I'm saying get an idea of something. Pursue. I don't know. whether carp can detect oil or something. That'll take you into different areas, and then you'll learn, and then your time will pass, and you'll be like, I read something about blah blah blah, and then you'll look back, and the best way of doing that is if you keep a note of where you've been, and keep a file, and even do notes on that file.
A perfect example.
That's what I would say.
A perfect example of this is in a previous podcast. I sort of mentioned about sort of like ammonia compounds and how they react with certain organic acids, and that has sort of like sparked a bit of a fire. So, and I had like the papers on this because I couldn't explain it in the episode, and I just know before I had like the papers on it, and I know what's in my mind is correct, but can I find it now? No, not really, because I wanted to come on the pod and sort of explain it in depth. But then, like we were saying earlier about how you were saying you sort of like you're researching something and then you go down a rabbit hole, and I've done that again now with sort of like different ammonia compounds. How we were talking about flavours, you can't just have sort of like a flavour and search for a koi paper with like a sort of like a whatever flavour it might be and a koi paper. You've got to understand what chemical compounds are in the flavour to start with, and do your research from there. But yeah, I've got quite into my sort of my flavours again with the sort of like the amines in there, sort of ammonia compounds, and I found a few different flavours with a few different sort of amines, and I want to sort of I'm looking at blending them together and then mixing with sort of like some organic acid just to try and get that reaction I was talking about before. But yeah, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole of late, and maybe in a future episode I'll sort of like divulge my findings and let you know how a few test baits are going and stuff.
That would be awesome, mate. Yeah, that would be really good. Really, really good. Yeah. I've just had an idea. Do you know what we should do? You know how the Carp Forum had the Carp Forum approved boilie recipe? Old Smurfs mix. We should have like a Carp Angler Chronicles approved boilie recipe. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
And again, for anyone who's listening, like go to the Carp Forum, and I think it's still like a pinned thread on the bait section. But if you want to get into rolling bait and you want to create your own sort of like balanced sort of nutritional bait, that is a fantastic mix, isn't it? To sort of start with.
Sturdy, nothing. It's not flash.
No.
It's Billy Basic, but it's good. It's damn good. Pretty inexpensive as well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's nothing crazy in it. I mean, the expense often comes from like your attractor profile. And then we've all been guilty of this. You'll end up like cramming too much in there just for the sake of it, just because you really want this one ingredient in.
You got 2.5% of that. You got 2.5% of this.
You shouldn't do that. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Everything's got to work synergistically, but you got to get it out of your system, and you'll do it in the early years for sure. Right. The next part of John Dubu Angling's question is favourite recipes / ingredients of all time and why. Freaking huge question, dude. That's like a whole podcast. But
God, yeah.
Favourite recipes. In a minute, Pete will tell you all of his favourite recipes. For me, I'll answer the second part of the question, which was favourite ingredients of all time. I'm big into essential oils, oleoresins, very high quality GLM. I like my fish, hydrolysates. I would say they're my big ones. Isoeugenol, a good one. I would say they're my favourite all-time ingredients. But I mean, depends what. Oh, yeast and liver. Love liver. You don't see it spoken about that much these days. But I love liver, love yeast, I love a good yeast. Cheese powder, love cheese. There are a few of mine. Sorry, dude. I don't know if you're looking for like a one or two ingredients that I would just say I would not roll a bait without. That's not the case. Although at the minute for my hook baits, I would not roll one without an essential oil and an accompanying oleoresin. That might change. Ask me in 10 years, I might be like, nope, don't do that. But at the minute, that is something I am phenomenally confident in. Two that complement each other. Essential oil and oleoresin. I can't see myself rolling a hook bait without those two things in, to be honest with you. unless I wanted to do something very specific, which again, I can't see me wanting to. Pete?
Dude, I need a piss. You're going to have to do some editing. But I've got a question.
Oh, come on, dude.
I've
Come
got
on.
a question for you on the back of the oleoresins.
All right, you ask that, and I'll answer that whilst you're peeing, and then we'll seamlessly come back.
Right, hang on, in front of the mic. So, dude, like mentioning like the oleoresins. So I was talking to you about a little hook bait mix I'm putting together, and I was using a garlic essential oil, which is super potent, by the way. I just actually can't get over how potent it is. And you sort of really honed in on me saying, surely you're going to put an oleoresin in there as well. So I've done a little bit of research on sort of the oleoresins now, and from my research, now I'm of an opinion where surely like an oleoresin you'd favour in a bait over an essential oil, and it would take, I would have thought, some of the essential oil properties away from it. So why would you blend both? I know not always both are available or hard to source anyway, but why would you blend both rather than just an oleoresin kind of on its own, I guess?
I want the gustatory response, and I want the olfactory response. And I think maybe it's a confidence thing, but like if I make a bait with just the essential oil in, and then I make a bait with just the oleoresin in, I guarantee that using both, you'd want to obviously tweak your amounts together, is going to yield you not only much better results, but I honestly believe the longevity in that is going to be much, much greater. Like, it's fairly well written about, not necessarily in like the koi papers because they don't really use essential oils, but it's very well written about of essential oils blowing. Pete won't be able to answer because he's having a piss, but I'm sure he can back this up when he comes back.
I'm back.
I do not think that is the case when you get the oleoresin with the essential oil.
To be honest with you, so I guess because my experience in fishing myself, I've read a lot about essential oils blowing, but in my experience of fishing, I think because I've always tinkered with bait, I've quite often been on the move, and I've never sort of stuck with one bait. I mean, we spoke about our bait which we used to call the Marley. I think that was a bait I've stuck with for the longest period of time, without it. Well, one of my baits anyway, because I'm always tinkering. The structure of I just think now, because an oleoresin's a blend essentially of the essential oil and the resin of the plant. So now my sort of takings on it are probably, I'd just be better if I could pick one over the other. I'd probably be better to go for the oleoresin. But
that's not quite true, actually.
Go on.
Essential oils are they're basically produced by it's like distilled water that they like steam into the actual plant matter, as far as I'm aware, right? Whereas oleoresins, they're generally extracted with a solvent.
Okay.
So like I think they use ethanol or something like that. So they're not an oleoresin isn't. An essential oil is not a component of an oleoresin. It's the same plant matter, but there's a different extraction process. Okay. So obviously, if you're extracting the goods with steam, steamed water into the plant matter to create the essential oil, that's going to come out with something very different than if the oleoresin, a different part of it, is extracted with a solvent. Mm-hmm. They're two different things. But no, oleoresins aren't made up of something and essential oils. That's not correct. I'm pretty certain on that. So, to be honest,
you're probably right. So I've done a very little bit of Googling on it, and that's a very sort of broad, generic answer that anybody who can do a Google search it will come up with. But like I say, the makeup of oleoresin and stuff, I am by means no expert. And I've not used a lot of oleoresins. I've used a lot of essential oils. One I've just recently bought actually, which is due to be delivered any day, is a sweet orange essential oil that I've been sort of recommended. So, but yeah, very rarely use an oleoresin myself. But you keep banging on about it, mate. So I need to sort of take heed and have a bit of a experiment, I guess. Like something like the garlic oil I've been using. If I was to use the garlic oil and an oleoresin as well, like one drop of this garlic oil is just wow, like too potent to be honest. So I guess I'd have to make double the liquid mix, wouldn't I, and use only half. But yeah, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. Go for it, dude.
Yeah, no worries. So what about you, Pete? Any favourite recipes or favourite ingredients of all time?
Yeast. Like I've used yeast in pretty much like the majority of my baits. I'm a big sort of. I've used a lot of brewer's yeast. I've been exploring different ones recently, but I've not sort of like used them as such yet. But yeah, I've used brewer's yeast in an awful lot of my fishing, and Marmite as well, like, as a paste. You can use it in a base mix or in a paste, and it's fantastic. Black pepper essential oil, like we mentioned. Betaine. I've used a lot of betaine as well. There's varying types of betaine as well, and they've got very different sort of pH profiles. So it depends what you want to achieve there. They're sort of my go-tos, I'd say. They're my go-tos, and I know we've mentioned it a million times, but the old faithful fish sauce as well.
Awesome. Good. And then the final part of John Boodoo Angling's question is, when you're looking to formulate your own bait, what are you looking to cover? Amino acid profile, ? Taste, ? Protein content, ? Solubility, ? Yeah, all of those things. How, yeah, yes, I'm looking at all of those components. For sure, as well as pH and other bits and bobs. Yeah. What about you, Pete?
Like you're saying, yeah, all of those things. But one thing I'd say wouldn't be to focus on putting all of those things perfectly into one bait, because you'll beat yourself up over it. I think you've got to sort of like pick something that you want to focus on, and sort of focus on that, getting that part of the bait aspect right. Yeah, that's it really.
Absolutely, mate. Okay. Good stuff. Last question is from Fishing Fletch, who I think asked a question earlier, actually. In fact, let me scroll back. Yeah, he was our first question. He's asked another, which is cool. Enjoyed the latest podcast. Areas / possibilities for your bait episode. Pre-baiting tips. Modern flavour / liquid combos rather than old school ones. I like that. Bait for weedy waters. Looking forward to it. Yeah, good area. Pete, do you want to go? I tell you what, I like coming to this stage. I'm tired. I'm just like tired. I need some beers to like G me up a little bit.
Dude, it's not
missing my beer, mate.
I've drunk all my beers. I'm a little bit sad.
Have you?
Yeah.
Woo! How many have you had?
3. Madman.
3.
Yeah.
Woo!
Mate, that's, I only brought 3 with me. They've gone very quickly.
It's a lot for you.
I know. Yeah, wild. Dude, I've forgotten the question. You're going to have to go with it again. You've distracted me.
Jeez, Pete. Okay. Our man Fishing Fletch has said, or asked, should I say, enjoyed the latest areas / possibilities for your bait episode. Pre-baiting tips. Let's start with that. Let's make life easy. Pre-baiting tips. I would say 2 most important things for me are, well, make sure it's getting eaten, because you don't want to just keep piling it on top of old bait, but regularity. Be as regular as you freaking can. As long as it is getting eaten, you can't be too regular. That would be the main thing for me. Obviously, give them something that they want to eat. You may well want to get fish species specific. What I mean by that is, if you're after the carp, but there's also bream and tench and roach and things like that in the water, maybe you want a bait that isn't going to be attracting them as much, and it's going to be more carp specific. Hard to do that, obviously big baits and nuts are the easy way to go as far as that's concerned, although they're not obviously foolproof. But yeah, I would say that's big things. Keep it going in as regular as you physically can. Steer the type of bait towards A, what you'll be fishing for, and B, the fish that you're fishing for. And yeah, obviously make sure it is being eaten. Don't just pile loads of bait upon moldy bait. Aside from that, don't let anyone see you because you don't want them poaching up your spot.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, dude.
Nothing to add?
No, not really. Like you said, regularity, mate. That is key. Like the more often you can do it,
An amount
fantastic.
as well.
Yeah, but it's all lake dependent, and you've got to sort of like make that decision on the knowledge of the lake that you've got. But yeah, and don't let anyone see you. I like that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Modern flavour / liquid combos, brackets, rather than the old school ones. I really like that because we always get a little bit rose-tinted glasses, don't we? Starry-eyed. We talk about the old flavours we can't get, and like we bitch and moan about it. But yeah, what are some modern liquids out there that are good? I like that question. I like where he's coming at. What's useful, I guess, is what he's saying. What's useful for the listeners? There's no good us banging on about how good frickin', I don't know, Winter Secret used to be if you can't get it now.
Yeah, true.
Pete, are you using flavours at the minute? Because I'm actually not. So if you are, you might be more qualified to answer.
I've literally just sort of like recently bought a new one, which I haven't even fished with yet. I've got some baits drying at home. I'm waiting for them to be like little bullets before I start sort of adding a little bit more of my sort of like flavour and some other additives on top. And that is crayfish flavour. So I went down the rabbit hole. We were talking about the old squid and octopus flavour and the ammonia compound in that, and I've sourced a different crayfish flavour, which I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what sort of like amine it's got in it, what ammonia compound it is. It's different to the old sort of squid and octopus flavours anyway. So I'm experimenting with that in a minute. That's my plan anyway. And that is crayfish and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a British Aquafeeds crayfish flavour anyway. But yeah, that's as far as I can discuss it. I haven't used it yet, but give us a few sessions and we'll see how I get on with it, I suppose.
What makes you so sure there's an amine in there? Does it say it in the write up, or have you inquired about it?
I've inquired. So I spoke to them. I asked if there was I can't pronounce it, like trimethylamine. I think that's my best pronunciation of it. Which is the sort of like the ammonia compound in a lot of the old sort of squid flavourings anyway.
The koi rira definitely had that.
Yeah. To which they sort of responded to say, no, it doesn't contain it, but it does contain a different amine. I've sort of tried to pursue them to find what it is, but obviously they don't want to let up, which is fair enough because it's their flavour and they highly rate it. Crayfish and thermidor, that's what it is. Like the old Hutchie, I guess, lobster thermidor sort of flavour.
I'm on the website. I will go on the website and have a look. What is it? British Aquafeeds.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I rate a good flavour. I really do. Free delivery on orders over £75. Sounds like we're doing an advert, doesn't it? We're really not.
So to the listeners, while you're researching that, the podcast we did, we're on our little social. I don't know if you remember this, mate. We're a few beers in.
Yeah.
But I can't even remember the website. We went on. It was like a flavour house website, and I think we read out every single listed flavour they had, which was extensive. It didn't make great.
Don't worry. I'm doing it in a minute, mate.
Oh, great!
Don't worry, it's coming. No, it's not. Yeah, I've got it here. Crayfish and thermidor flavour. Do you like it, Pete? Are you is it good, or are you just like literally just getting to grips with it?
I'm getting to grips with it. It's quite pungent, mate. I don't know. I can't. Like I say, I'm getting to grips with it. I'm doing it purely for the sort of like the ammonia compounds, which I'm experimenting with at the moment. Whether I'll use it at the moment, my first sort of batch of bait, it's being used sort of exclusively on its own. Whether I'll try to mix it with different flavours, with different amines in. That's probably the route I'm looking to go down. and I'm using that. Like I mentioned, the garlic essential oil earlier with betaine, some betaine in the mix as well, and my old favourite N-butyric acid as well. Stinky. Needless to say, mate, I have rolled these and cooked them outside. I don't want that hassle bringing them in the house. They are humming.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the smelliest flavour you've ever used?
Ooh. I don't know, dude. I don't know. Go on. Yours.
Monster crab.
Yeah.
Probably. Do you know what? Everyone goes on about the Baitworks scent from hell flavour being really strong smelling.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever used it? Have you ever had any or anything?
I've never had them, but I've looked at them and checked them out, and friends have used them, and I've had the smell on my hands for days, kind of thing.
I really like that smell. I don't know why.
Wow.
Yeah, I really, really like it.
I just can't even describe
Genuinely.
it. It's like it smells like a pair of boxers I've worn in a rugby match. Do you know what I mean? It's just horrible.
Yeah,
Maybe that's your thing.
There's definitely some kind of acids in there, I think. Yeah.
Having said
cool.
that, sorry, dude. I was fermenting some nuts and I let them go too long, and they got developed like a layer of mold on top of them. It's been really warm. My shed gets really warm, and I just left them too long. So then they sort of like developed this like layer of mold on top, and I was just like, oh, like forget about them now. They're ruined, kind of thing. I didn't throw them away, and then about a week later, I was a bit like, right, I need to get another batch sort of going. Oh my days, the smell of them when they had really gone sort of like just putrefied, I guess. It just smelled like vomit, like pure vomit. But I was thinking, like, would you put them in a lake? Would you be tempted?
Me? No. Well, I wouldn't. No, not if they've gone too far.
They've gone like way too far, but how far's too far for a fish? You know what I mean?
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's something sparked in my memory, but there was, I want to say apples, really rotten apples someone used. Have you read anything about that? Maybe it was in a book.
No.
Wasn't in an old Hutchie book, was it? Might have been it might have been in something Rod Hutchinson wrote about really fermented moldy apples being phenomenally good. I cannot remember. Probably just shouldn't have said anything. And apparently very effective. But no, if they're nuts, if they've gone too far, I don't use them, mate. I don't use them. I know some people say fresh is better, but I think a good fermented nut is definitely more efficient.
Yeah.
It's maybe it's what you come in, what you're confident with. I know Ken Townley is a big fan of just having fresh tiger nuts. Yeah, I'm sure many others are as well. Yeah, I like them fermented, but not too far.
Yeah, you were talking about the rotten apples. I've read an article a while ago, and again, I couldn't for the life of me remember where I read it, but it was about fermented garlic, but left to go too far. So it's like literally rancid, and apparently the carp go absolutely crazy for it. A lot of that then got me thinking about the whole blending sort of like a garlic like EO with N-butyric, and do you know what I mean? Sort of like got me playing along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, but it's probably some kind of chemical reaction that's happening that's attractive, right?
Yeah, but it's like, when like a hydrolyslate, for example, it's been through that process where it's been broken down. I guess things like fermenting and going too far and going putrid and rotting is essentially a very similar process, but in a different environment.
Well, yes, but it's also about protein splitting. Not necessarily byproducts of that.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? With the hydros. But yeah, of course, they're. Well, I mean, I was saying to you, wasn't I? Like you were saying, why do you use amylase to break down sugars? Why not use this? Well, it's the magic that happens alongside it. You know, well, it's not magic; it's chemistry. But
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Using different sort of length sugar molecules, saccharides, and that. And
yeah, and just different different chains. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's like I must say, a lot of it, or some of it certainly, I don't even understand. But be very confident in it, if that makes sense. I'm by no means saying that I understand every single chemical reaction that's going. I really don't. Maybe there's someone out there that does, but definitely ain't me. But sometimes I guess you don't need to know, do you?
no.
That's the thing. So yeah, I like that question. For me, flavors, I mean, new ones. I haven't experimented with much of the new ones. I've heard great things about Catch It Labs, which are obviously a play on words from Catchem, which is obviously Rod Hutchinson's old flavors company, or his old bait company, should I say. I've heard good things about them. In terms of what I use, something that I use that you can get very readily available is betalain, which is betaine and talin, which is a very strong, talin is a very strong sweetener. I use that for sure. I am a fan of that stuff. I think it's very, very good. But yeah, I mean, some good combos of oleoresins. I will happily share that, oleoresins and essential oils. I think isoeugenol with fenugreek on both parts I think there's something in there. Big fan of fenugreek. And it's nothing new. It's a well proven attractor. But yeah, I would say those three go very, very well together. Fenugreek, oleoresin, essential oil, and then isoeugenol as well. That's a winner for sure. Yeah, cinnamon in winter. Cinnamon essential oil. I'll be honest, I've never used the cinnamon essential oil with a cinnamon oleoresin. I will be trying it this winter. And I'm quite looking forward to that. And drop a clove with that as well, I would recommend. But yeah, that's it. I've got no real modern flavors to add, I'm afraid. Sorry, bit boring.
That's it. How are we doing? We still got more questions, mate? This is amazing.
Well, there's a bit more Fishing Fletch.
Okay.
Sorry, Fishing Fletch's question. His last bit was bait for weedy waters. I don't. Go on, Pete. Have you got anything on that? I'll finish what I was going to say. I only fish weedy waters now. I haven't fished a water without weed for I don't know, a long years. Oh no, actually I tell a lie. When I came down and did the social with you, Pete, I don't think there's any weed in there. But all of my waters are weedy. I know Pete fishes a little bit more of a diverse kind of some more diverse lakes. What about you, Pete? Do you vary things for a weedy water?
I think the only time I would sort of really vary it is if I was looking to sort of like achieve like fish clearing a spot, perhaps. And then I'll probably be looking at using a lot of particle to pre-bait. Other than that, it's bait and sort of like the weedy water isn't something I'd think about too much, really.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you can clear certain types of weed with particles. Mm-hmm. So if you want to clear a spot off, so it's a firmer bottom, you can use small particles, groats, hemp, etc., and they'll clear off an area very well. Bait for weedy waters, I mean, it depends how you're fishing from. You can choose some baits that will lay on top of the weed, which can definitely be an advantage, or other times you might want a real heavy bait that will punch through the weed. It depends. I think, to be honest, these waters where they're very choked in weed, as a lot of the lakes are up here, I think the clear spots get done to death. I mean, you find a big glowing area. I mean, it's going to get a load of anglers bait probably, but I don't know if that's always a good thing. Depends if you want to catch a lot of fish or if you want to single out some fish. If you want to single out some fish, maybe you're better off fishing them in a way that they're not as used to being fished for or dealing with rigs, etc. I already said earlier, I mean, I love using a bait off of the spot. I'll happily bait up a real blatant spot and fish rods, a couple of rod lengths off of it, and I'll be confident in that. I think you get what I call them orbiters. Like, you'll get some carp that will just like go in there on the feed. You'll get other carp that will hang back. Not always, but sometimes the ones you want will hang back. Of course, if that's happening, then maybe you want a bait hung up in the weed. And obviously you can use pop-ups for that. Yeah, it depends what kind of arrangement you want. But other than that, I can't say that I would go for a particular type of ingredient or a particular type of liquid or powder. I suppose you could look at pH. That would be something that would have mileage in it for sure. Visual baits as well. I mean, weedy waters, certainly the ones I fish, very clear. Like, they're tap water up here. So, you can get away with perhaps duller baits than you would do elsewhere. I think they can definitely spook off a big bed of, say, corn. Too much sweet corn, I think, can be maybe a bit too blatant for the more wary fish. You might get the odd stocky come in and hoover it up, but you might want to rein things back a little bit for the older fish that you're after. It's location dependent again. I'm sorry if that's not a very good answer, or if it's not what you're after, but I think that ultimately comes into it, really. What about you, Pete? Anything to add to that, or not?
I don't think so, dude. No. Like you're saying, there's not a great deal of weedy waters I tend to fish these days. Having said that, the one I'm targeting this year is pretty weedy in places, but no, not particularly.
Yeah, I mean, you said about the algae bloom on yours. That's like your main thing you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, and I think, to be honest with you, it's just I think it's a confidence thing as well. I think if it wasn't affecting me sort of like mentally, it's almost like it's like making me not enjoy my fishing as much, because one, it's like chocolate soup, which doesn't appeal to me. And two, I don't know how much it does affect the fishing. I don't know if it's just because I'm fishing with less confidence, really, I guess, and I haven't put 100% effort as I would put into it if I was really, really into it. Do you know?
Someone asked a question on the Carp forum the other day about what people would do in waters with an algae bloom. My reply was like, I'd look at pH first. I don't know if you've done that, Pete.
No, not really. I mean, again, sort of like pH plays a factor in the ingredients that I choose because of a reaction. Quite often I'm trying to create in the bait rather than sort of like the pH as an attractor as itself. Do you know what I mean? So it's not something I'd really look at like that. I don't know if you want to sort of go into it, what your explanation was.
No. I mean, if the pH is fairly consistent, I mean, in which my boom is real squeaky. Sorry if that's coming out on mic. Can you hear that?
I just assumed you're getting some feedback or something.
No, it's my boom's gone squeaky. I have to lubricate it. It's, what was I saying about? Oh yeah, pH. Look, a lot of the time it's not consistent anyway. So like it'll change all the time. So I mean, I know Pete has as well. Experimenting with pH. pH is not a constant thing within a water. Yeah, sure, it's going to be somewhere on the spectrum. It's going to stay roughly around there. Great, you can use that to your advantage. Something like a situation where the water is very murky from the algae bloom. I mean, first off, make sure it's safe to actually fish for these fish. Make sure they've got adequate oxygen. Make sure it's being checked, by someone who knows what they're on about, who's got an oxygen meter. That's really important. You don't want to fish for these fish that are unable to breathe properly for obvious reasons. Long story short, visual is largely taken out. You want to really attract those fish to that area. So of course, soluble ingredients are going to come into play, but as well as that, pH is a big one, I feel. That's about it, really. Perfect, mate.
How we doing?
We're doing good. That is the end of the questions.
Ooh.
That is all of them. Yeah, I know.
Mate, it's just it's amazing, isn't it, that many people have sort of like written in, I think, to ask questions about bait, etc. That's cool. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and 3 of them were from the post I put earlier. So most of the questions are from, people just thinking that they will reach out to us, which is lovely. Well, we're both very approachable. So it's nice to engage with people that listen. It's a bit of a weird thing, podcasting. I suppose it's the same as making YouTube videos or whatever. Not that I do that, but we're obviously we're talking to each other, but we're not even with each other. We're talking into a microphone. We're on the phone to each other. We record our audio separately. We're very disconnected from not only each other, but you, the audience, as well. So to get a message, I don't know, it just kind of feels nice and feels like a little community, I guess. I don't know. Hard to explain. But appreciate it anyway, for everyone that's messaged in. I appreciate it. And I'm more than happy to help you and answer your questions, as long as obviously it doesn't get crazy and I'm getting loads of messages, which I don't think will happen. But it's nice to have some structured content on this episode, and I hope you've all enjoyed it.
Boom. Finished?
Yeah, I wasn't. No, I was just genuinely thanking people.
I thought you just.
I wasn't rounding it off.
I was like, have we got anything else to add?
No,
I'll add something.
No, I think we'll round it off. But no, yeah, go ahead, mate.
For those of you that like the Instagram page and know about us for Instagram, give us a like on Facebook, because it'll give me a little bit more credibility toward the podcast.
Definitely do that. Oh, by the way, if you can take out a few moments to leave us a review, we would really appreciate that. It really helps us keep going when we get these reviews. I know it might sound like a small thing for you and you're going about your day and you can't really be asked, but it actually means a lot to us and it really helps our podcast. And the thing is, we enjoy doing these things, but we don't want to do it if no one's listening. So it's a great way for us to, reach more people and make sure that you're enjoying it as well, in the same respect with the messages. It is really good to hear the feedback. Not that we want our egos stroking or anything like that. That's not the case. But we don't want to be spending all this money and effort on something if no one's really enjoying it. So yeah, go and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. And in fact, Pete, what we need to do, we'll do this on the next episode. Make sure we remember this. We'll read out everyone's review and just give them a little bit of a shout out and say thank you. I think that's only right.
So, mate.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else you want to add, Pete, or should we round it off, sign off, and say goodnight?
Yeah, no, round it off, mate. I think it's been a good one. A couple of hours in, plenty to talk about. So, yeah, no, good fun.
Yeah, superb. Awesome. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care. Much love. Bye-bye.